Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, November, what is it, Chris? 15th, Rangers Reviews morning briefing as we continue throughout this latest, the last international break of the year. Myself and Chris Jack here to ease you into the weekend. Chris, how about that? If that's a fair description. How are you today since I last spoke to you? I think yesterday.
Yesterday, about 12 hours or so ago.
Yeah.
Speak to you more often than I speak to my wife and the children.
Yeah.
But that's not just reserved for the international break. That's reserved for every week in the world of Rangers, because, as we always say, there's always plenty going on. Did you tune into the Masters tournament last night? Did you
I
watch
didn't.
that?
No, I thought I'd take a break from watching Rangers. Did you?
I thought you'd be there. There's a bit of tactical stuff that you could have to find out to see how the setup compares. It was actually quite good. Also, not the ending that the Rangers were hoping for. A missed penalty in a shootout, costing them the silverware. As my memories flash back to a certain night in Spain not that long ago. It was a good watch. Nice to see some of the old timers back pulling on their boots and strutting their stuff, I always say. But it's not the ending that Rangers were hoping for, unfortunately.
Indeed, right. We're going to talk a little bit more about the month of December today, Chris. But what I will say to people is, if they want to try and get their questions in, they will get through as many as possible. As always, we'll give priority to our YouTube members for their questions on the morning briefing. But do fire in the topics you want covered, and we'll get to them. Chris, first and foremost, I forgot to mention this in the podcast all week, but the Rangers Review is doing the Big Ibrox sleep out tomorrow, Saturday, isn't it? Tomorrow, raising money for homelessness in Glasgow this winter. And the Rangers Charity Foundation's two partners, and this is the Simon Community in Glasgow City Mission. I've put the link to that Just Giving page in the description to the video if people want to support that. All the money going to those three aforementioned charities. There's a little bit of information on the website as well about what the night entails. We'll be speaking to people, Chris, at the event, getting a little bit of their story, speaking to people from the charities as well, and hopefully doing some actual proper journalism for once instead of just talking about football.
I know it's a cause that's very close to your heart, and also close to the heart of a number of Rangers fans. The club have been doing this event for a long time, raised a lot of money, raised a lot of awareness over these events. They always seem really well attended, and I notice your Just Giving page is already well surpassed its target. So a great effort for everyone to support you. I'm looking forward to reading the piece next week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to support that, lots of other people doing it as well. The Big Ibrox Sleep Out, raising money for homelessness this winter. The link to that is in the description below. Right, Chris, let's talk. Stevie's got an article on the website this morning, so we'll talk about that briefly before we start to get to some comments. We touched upon this yesterday, the fact that December's a defining month. We said November's a defining month, October's a defining month, and they all are. Without repeating ourselves, if you compare the momentum that Rangers had around December last year, Clement was just over a month into the job. They'd won the League Cup. They defeated Real Betis on home soil, and that was a big European win, because I don't think Betis had lost at home in quite a while at the time that Rangers went there and got a 3-2 victory. This year round, slightly different. The mood, the momentum at the moment. How do you see when I look at the month of December, when I read Stevie's piece, I think that what Clement really needs, and for those who, that we hear from in the comments every day, the people that you speak to, the mood at Ibrox, the sense that you get, I think what you really could do with is a couple of big wins to hang his hat on. He might point to results away in Europe that Rangers have had, being Malmo and to a lesser degree Olympiacos, where Rangers probably deserved the result on the night. The difficulty is, for better or worse, people are kind of used to a good away performance in Europe. It's now a long time since Rangers have won an Old Firm game, though, for example, in a meaningful fixture. Those are the type of games that I think Clement, especially 5 games into his Old Firm career, if you like, really needs to get right in December and January. Am I on the right track?
I think when the fixtures first come out in the summer, you always look for the Old Firm games. You look for the first couple of games of the season. How's the start? What kind of momentum can you build into a campaign? And then you look for the run leading up to and round about Christmas. It's a hectic schedule. There's a lot of games. You will have European games to factor into that as well. And this time of year, this kind of 4, 5, 6 weeks, it always somehow feels quite defining. It feels quite important. It sets you up or puts you on the back foot heading into the second half of the season. And you mentioned this time last year, you look at that run in December, Rangers had 7 wins between beating St Mirren in the first one and then heading into Parkhead. 7 wins, including, as you say, that victory in Betis, including the League Cup final against Aberdeen. And at that stage, there was real momentum being built. You then look at the fixtures that Rangers have coming up in December and coming up over the next couple of weeks. The opportunity is there, perhaps outside the Spurs game. The opportunity is there for Rangers to build that same momentum and to have that same good factor heading into the New Year derby. I think the feeling amongst the fans was very, very different this time compared to 12 months ago. Obviously, Clement was not long in the door this time last year. He had a very good start. There was very, very few negatives. Also, the draw with Aberdeen of Pataudry, and then the draw with Limassol, he took a wee bit of the shine off it. But overall, it was a very impressive start. Obviously, beating Hibs and Hearts early on, beating Hearts again. There's a big win at Dundee. So there was a lot to like about the early phases of Clement. He was able to kind of build the foundations through late October, through November, heading into this period. And Rangers then really kicked on during that period. Of course, it came to an end at Parkhead. And then even after that, they were able to go on another lengthy winning run until that fateful afternoon against Motherwell at Ibrox when the wheels came off. Things were never recovered. Rangers have never had that period of momentum. They've never had that feel-good factor. They've never had that feeling of things are actually on the right track and this could actually materialise into something this season. It's been really stop-start. We know the concerns about the style of play. We know the concerns about the manager, questions over some of the signings. So this run obviously starts with Dundee United at Ibrox next week. Nice, it's a tricky European tie in the grand scheme of things. Not the biggest fixture for Rangers coming up, but still an important one. You're then looking at St Johnstone away, Kelly at home, Ross County away, Dundee at home, St Mirren away and Motherwell away. If you're going to challenge, if you're going to have any hope of being Premiership title challengers, you have to win all those games. If you have any hope of catching Aberdeen anytime soon, you have to win all those games. Now, you do expect Aberdeen at some point to go through a stickier spell. You do expect them to drop points at some stage. But the problem that Rangers have got themselves into is they've given Aberdeen a fairly substantial head start, and it's going to take a prolonged period of Aberdeen falling away and a prolonged period of Rangers actually putting together a run of form for that gap, obviously, to be brought back down again. And that's the challenge heading into the Old Firm game at New Year. I think it's the second this time around. Can Rangers be perfect in terms of points in the Premiership? That's the challenge. That's the ambition. How realistic is it? I think if you did a straw poll of the several hundred people that are watching us right now, I don't think there'd be a lot of people that would be saying, yes, we really fancy Rangers to put that kind of run together.
Yeah, I guess that's the point, isn't it? Because you look at those, I hate calling fixtures winnable fixtures, but you look at 4 games that Rangers should win after the international break. If you're looking at the league, 2 home games, 2 away games, they have to be perfect to make up that 9-point deficit. They obviously have to hope that Aberdeen will drop points at some stage. And as you say, they've overperformed their underlying numbers. But also, if you're relying on a team getting worse to catch them up, you might not catch them up. You know what I mean? Rangers need to look at that, I think, and say 9 points. We're going to have to be pretty point perfect up until now. And the issue we've come back throughout the international break, Chris, is that they're not scoring enough goals, and maybe they're not conceding that much in terms of opportunities over the last few weeks. But a lot needs to change, I think, in terms of well, at risk of repeating ourselves over the course of the week, the underlying numbers, again, it's not as if they're creating loads of opportunities and not taking them. Before we get on to some different comments, what do you think will happen with the right back position? Because it's something that has been a topic of conversation all season. It's come to a head over the course of the last month. I thought Dujon Sterling was really good in that first half away at Olympiacos. really shut Martins out of the game, so much so that Martins moved to the other side after the break. He was taken off. It was planned that he wouldn't play the full 90 minutes. There was no injury though, and he came on obviously to play central midfield. The Connor Barron substitution we've already discussed. Casemiro has played around the pitch and looked very competent. I think wherever he's played, you could maybe say away at Aberdeen he had a couple of bad moments, but generally composed on the ball. I've quite liked him at centre back. But when you're looking at those games, in particular the Old Firm Cup final, I think everyone, if we were to take a straw poll of our viewers, who we appreciate, if we were to take a straw poll of them and you were to say who do you want up top in that game, or certainly who you want the option of having to choose between Dessers and Danilo, you want to have both on the bench ready to come on. Who do you want up top? Who do you want at right back? Who do you want at centre back? Would it unanimously be Danilo, Casemiro at centre back next to John Souttar and Dujon Sterling at right back? And do you think will that happen? Because we've been here before, haven't we?
I think the number 9 position, I think you get a fairly high buy-in to Danilo rather than Dessers. At centre half, I think it was slightly more split. I think you find a lot of people would go for Leon Balogun inside there alongside John Souttar rather than Casemiro. I think that's quite a close call, not a lot in that one for me. Right back, I think we both know the answer to that one. Know what the answer to that one would be.
Do you think the cup final though? Are you? Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Do you think that if you were to put your, I don't know, I'm not going to say your house because that's quite a lot on a Rangers lineup, but if you were to put something on who would start at right back against Celtic, against Maida, would you still think that James Tavernier will be there?
Yes, just because it's Clement that's picking. Well, as it stands, it's Clement that's picking that. It's Clement that's picking that side. For me, it would be Sterling. Without putting words in your mouth, I think you'd pick Dujon Sterling as well. I think a number of people on the show would like Sterling. I think it'll be James Tavernier. That's just the way that Clement picks his side. I think it would be a big call for him not to. I'm not convinced he's going to make that particular call. You asked at the start of this section, how's that right back situation going to unfold? I think we will see a bit more, or a continuation of this rotation. I think we will see Sterling get some more minutes. We will see Tav start some games at the bench, or perhaps be removed from games earlier. But I think when it comes to likes of the Celtic game in the final, and probably the Celtic game at Ibrox in January, I think it'll be Tavernier. There's little evidence to suggest that Clement would make that decision for it not to be James Tavernier. Even though I think we all agree that it probably shouldn't, and history shows that it probably shouldn't. I think that's the way that Clement will go, just from what we've seen and how he's handled this situation over the last couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, I don't know. I do get what you're saying, and what I think Clement really couldn't afford to, Chris, is if he was to pick the kind of so-called status quo and Rangers were to lose, because that would be seen as making the same mistake when you've got the evidence at hand to not make that mistake. I'm not so sure. We'll see how the next month plays out, but that's definitely a talking point that's going to mutter away in the background. Let's get to some questions, though. First one I'll point to you, Chris. Matthew Reid saying, when will the chairman and CEO be appointed? Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but understand it will likely be the chairman before the CEO, but these two have certainly dragged on, haven't they?
I think John Gilligan outlined a few weeks ago they expected the chief exec before Christmas, so Christmas is now hurtling towards us. The chairman position will be filled first. That's the move that they're looking to make first, and you then look at the rest of the appointments that have to be made. It will almost filter down. So chairman, then chief exec. You can then start looking at a replacement for Craig Robertson, potentially looking at the overall structure. I think we'd both like to see another football figure in there in terms of a sporting director or someone within that scope, someone within that remit. That will happen, or could happen further down the line. It's going to be the chairman first. Also, the AGM is the 4th or the 5th of December. 5th, I think, off the top of my head. Night after the Kelly game at Ibrox. So after that has taken place, I think there will be a real focus on what have this board done, what are they saying, what's the plan. It's shaping up to be a really interesting AGM. as long as people use it in the right way. If there's questions about parking and pies, then it goes down as a completely wasted opportunity. The AGM could be really interesting. I would imagine there will be a chairman in before then. I think they would like to have that position filled, even just from an optics, to use the modern phrase. From an optics perspective, it looks better if you have your permanent chairman in there rather than an interim chairman and John Gilligan having to oversee that meeting. So that's where we're at. Also, still another couple of weeks away from that, but I think the chairman position is the priority at present in terms of being closest to being appointed and to being done. But as we know and as we've spoken about, that's not the only big call that has to be made at boardroom and executive level. There's a lot of work there to be done over these next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, next question from James Marshall. He says, morning guys, is it just me or does it feel like Clement never starts his strongest 11? Hate comparing, but under Gerrard we would start our strongest 11 and try to win the game. This has been consistent, Chris, a consistent feature of Clement's career actually, and if you speak to people who were with him at Monaco or followed his time closely at Monaco, it's something that I guess increased even as the pressure increased on him and he eventually left Monaco, lost the job at Monaco. That the changes in the starting 11, because he's never really had, I would say, at Rangers, a strongest starting 11. And part of that has to do with the fact that there's so many games and managers have to change so regularly. Part of that is down to the fact that he's not had, that this fitness issue is permeated in the background throughout his entire time at Rangers. He inherited a squad, and I think this comes on to the need for some sort of sporting director figure. He inherited a squad that wasn't suited to his football, and eventually that caught up with Rangers. And what they can't do in appointing a CEO and chairman now is think that's the job done, because there's obviously still areas to fill. But I still think there needs to be some form, surely, of structural change that puts there's a reason that right throughout football, the majority of clubs have some sort of sporting director over a manager, someone to make decisions about a manager's future, someone with a footballing knowledge who a manager is accountable for in terms of performance. And I think it's been a big oversight that Rangers don't have that, and it's one of the big reasons that they're here. But to go back to Clement's starting 11, it's been a feature of his whole time at the club. I remember when, even back to last season, Rangers went to St Johnstone, and it was when they first went top. They won 3-0, and he started Scott Wright over his first choice right winger that day. It might have been McCausland. I remember speaking to someone saying, they were saying, why doesn't he just go with his out-and-out strongest 11? He needs to win this game. There was other examples, Kilmarnock away, where he started Barisic over Yilmaz, for example. Chefty didn't play at left-back, even though he's been one of Rangers' best players, away at Aberdeen last week. So this is something that has very much been within the fabric of his year at Rangers so far, isn't it? And I don't think that if you were to ask him, do you have a strongest team? I don't think he'd think in those terms. He'd probably go along the lines of this being a squad game and picking the right puzzle for every match. Am I interpreting this right?
I think if you put him on the spot and said, you have everyone fit, give us 11 players, I think he would change his mind a number of times before he actually settled on it. He would want to know who the opposition is, if it's after a European game or before a European game, because he puts so much into, as you say, putting all these different pieces of the puzzle together. I'm assuming he would go and ask the sports science guys if everyone is fit and how many minutes people can get through. I don't think it's a case of that's 11 players, that's the strongest 11. I don't think, as you say, I don't think he would view a team selection in that way. If everyone is fit, I think there's certain players who are guaranteed to be in that strongest 11. Butland, obviously, Suter, Jefty certainly falls into that category. I think if everyone is fit, though, it doesn't cause issues at the top end of the pitch, but asks more questions at the top end of the pitch. So you not really that many options on the right hand side, for example. So Tierney plays. On the other side, if Cortez is fit, you'd imagine you want a more natural pace, more natural width. Cortez then plays. Where does Barami then fit in? If you think, well, Barami's not a number 10, that's where he should play. That's fine. He goes in at number 10. Where does Diomande go? Does Diomande then drop back a line and because you want him in the team? If he does, is it Barron or is it Raskin that's dropping out? Both of whom individually and collectively have been good over the last couple of weeks. So certain players, I think, are miles ahead. Say Butland, obviously, miles ahead. Shooter, first choice centre half. Shefty, even though Ridvan is now getting closer to being back involved, Shefty, for me, holds on to that place until form or injury says otherwise. When you get further up, I think there are some different questions. It might not be as easy as there's 11. The good thing, I think, hopefully after this break, you will see likes of Cortez, likes of Matondo coming back, because Rangers really need those options in the final third. We've spoken a lot this week about creating chances and scoring goals. They do need more options in there, and it'll be interesting to see how the manager actually feeds them back in. And you're looking at out of all of these games that we've got coming up, if you're going to say give us 11 players, what is the best team for one game only? It's going to be the cup final against Celtic, because if, as you touched on earlier on, if he was to lose that, it's a long, nigh on impossible way back in the eyes of Rangers fans. So I think if he is going to have an 11, it has to be fit for that one. Throughout the rest of this run, I think we will see a lot of mixing and matching.
Yeah, and he has made big calls at points as well. I think back to Connor Goldson last season, to the fact that he didn't, although it might not feel like it now, he didn't start Tavernier away at Olympiacos, and that was the first time he'd been quote unquote dropped for a big game. So yeah, I wouldn't write it off. Timothy this with a bit of a harsh comment, Chris, seeing as you know I'm such a Chefty fan, says, what does Chefty actually offer apart from running with the ball? Has he even had a goal or assist so far this season? Gordon adding Yilmaz or Chefty if Yilmaz is ever fit. For me at Chefty, 20 years old, Chris, coming into not a brilliantly performing team, he's had one or two poor defensive moments, but for a 20-year-old coming into the team, I think that's pretty good. I think he offers Rangers a lot. And there was a moment in the first half against Hearts where his final ball, where I agree with Timothy, his final ball, I think still needs to be refined. There was that moment where he got the ball by the touchline, beat two Hearts players, and should have played a pass into Dessers. He kind of fired it into his feet, and the chance was gone. But he's the player that I think Conor Barron has been equally impressive, but he's definitely the player I look at from the summer, as I've made this point before probably, and think that's the model Rangers should be going for, someone who's coming in for a relatively low fee and is young, but isn't someone who's going to take 2-3 years of sitting on the bench. He's ready to contribute now, and I think he's impressed people with the fact that the plan was to rotate him with Ridvan, sometimes use him higher up the pitch at points. He's had to make that left-back spot his own, and I think he really has.
I was just as you're speaking there, having a quick double check at his stats. I know you'll know these things off the top of your head, but to answer the point, he has 0 goals and 0 assists according to Transfermarkt. So that's a negative on the Jefty report card, if you like.
Yeah.
But I think overall, like you, he has done probably more than people expected of him, to come in and settle into a new club, into a new culture, new country, new dressing room. I think it says a lot about him at 20 years old. We have seen other players come in and take a lot longer than him to adapt. And I think you also have to be quite impressed with the way that he came back from that red card against Kiev. Obviously, a terrible call on the night, one that he clearly felt aggrieved about, as did everyone at the club. But you could say, well, that red card cost Rangers the chance to progress in the Champions League. It wasn't his fault, but it was still him that was at the centre of it. It's him that was at the centre of the conversation and the headlines and all the social media stuff. But it didn't really affect him. He served his ban in Europe, got straight back into it domestically. And for me, he's the first choice left back. He's also shown, which Ridvan has not, that he can play Wednesday, Thursday, and then play on a Saturday or a Sunday. He can go through that. He can go through that run of games. And from a physical perspective and a mental perspective, again, I think it says quite a lot about a guy at 20 making such a big move. So he's not perfect. He's clearly still young, still raw. So a lot of improvement to come, hopefully. But I think if you looked at when he was signed, say, what do you expect from Jefty between now and this international break? I think he's surpassed what a lot of people have laid out for him.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, 20. We also think he's younger than Robbie Fraser, isn't he? And I know that football careers are or different. But I think he's been really, really good, and at 20 years old, that is not easy to do. Comment here from CGM 55. Is this Rangers' strongest team then? Chris Butland, Sterling, Suter, Balogun, Ridvan, Raskin, and Barron, and Bayrami, Cortez. He's not played in so long, I'm forgetting how to say his name. Cherney and Danilo. Wouldn't really disagree with that. I'd maybe put Castlemere in at centre half. At the moment, I'd probably put Chefty in over Ridvan, in all honesty. I'm not sure if both are fully fit, but as you say, Chris, you can't really rely on Ridvan being fully fit at this moment in time. Diamandi, I think, is an interesting discussion because he's not had a great season. I think I think we've made this point for a long time. I think he's suffering as a consequence of the system sometimes. But I agree on current form. You've got a player Raskin and Barron in there. That's a team that's got, I think, potential in it and has got legs in it, Chris, and a bit of variation in the front four. But the question is, will we ever see it this season? And should, if all going well on the injury front. But that last season, you could, if you put the point in, what is Rangers' strongest starting 11? The strongest front four would have been Sima, Cortez, Cantwell, and Danilo, and that was never seen together either, was it? So you've just got to, I guess, Clement will just have to hope that what happened last season doesn't happen this season, because that is a team that I think immediately improves his fortunes and makes the product look better.
The chances of Sterling, Ridvan, and Cortez all being available and not injured at the same time, how high are those chances? Yeah. Guys that have had, you could probably throw Danilo into that as well. I do like the look of that side. I would go, as we've just touched on, I would go JST at left back over Ridvan. But as you say, how often will we see that? Will we see that side? Would people be happy with that 11 heading into the cup final? I think you probably get quite a lot of buy-in for that. But we know the cup final comes on the back of Spurs at Ibrox, and you then play a weekend or a weaker side, if you like, on the Thursday to prioritise the Sunday. These are the questions that the manager's going to have to answer. I think as Stevie touches on in his piece this morning, it's not just a results issue now. He needs performances. He needs to give the fans something to buy into that's a bit more exciting, that's a bit more engaging. It's not just scraping through and winning games 1-0 and saying, well, everything is rosy, because Rangers have done that a number of times this season and everything is not rosy. So he needs to, through this run, it's not just a case of winning games, obviously always the most important aspect. We needs to start seeing a bit more of a style. We need to see players actually improving, need to see the team improving, and that's the challenge heading into this run. Having players like Cortez back, like Danilo back up to speed would certainly help. And once these guys are fit, there are then no excuses. If Rangers are still turgid to watch, then there's then huge questions over what Clement is actually doing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'd definitely be going with that. I don't think it's controversial, but if you're looking at that Spurs game and you're looking at the Old Firm Cup final, you definitely need to play your strongest team at the weekend, don't you? And I think that Spurs game will be really difficult. Maybe you sit in a little bit more, maybe a bit more conservative, but that's not I don't think that can be the priority for Rangers that week. We shall see, though, Chris. Listen, we'll leave it there, and we're going to be back next week, of course. Loads of content to come for you over the course of the weekend. A bit of a look at Jose Cifuentes in Greece, who's doing really well, actually, in the Greek Super League. You can keep up to date with that. We've got tactical analysis over the weekend. We've got a closer look at the question of Clement's style of play. What's he trying to do? What is working? What's not? But more of a look at his ideas in general, and much, much more as ever. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel for free if you've not done so already. That really helps us out. And of course, subscribe to the website as well for the best Rangers journalism as we approach a really busy few months, Chris. Until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you on Monday. Bye for now.